creating 2019 and how we can create the happiness around the next 12 months for us. So, what I want to suggest to you in this week's session is that I want you to put out an intention. What do you want within yourself that's going to create that happiness within your being? The way that we can create some happiness, and I'm going to give you some tips here, is several different ways. I'm going to give you 3 specific ones that are top of my list that helps create happiness. One of them consists of 4 subcategories. And this comes from the Buddhist text that I like to refer to often. And that is the art of suffering, or the 4 noble truths. One of the 4 noble truths is to understand that suffering exists. As long as you're a human being and you're on the face of this earth, or you're anything that exists on the face of this earth, you're going to encounter suffering. I know this sounds very mundane, and it's very hard for us to connect spiritually and with our hearts and our mind. But I want you to take a look at a blade of grass. A blade of grass can exist in the Antarctica, and it can exist barely amongst the edges of the deserts. It can exist in California. It can exist in New York City. It could be in Afghanistan, and it could be in Brazil, South Africa, or Australia. What am I getting at? What I'm getting at is that that blade of grass is amongst billions, as we are, and each of them will have a different experience. Okay, of course, collectively, if they live in one environment, they're going to collectively go through deep, cold, treacherous winters, very hot summers. And some of them, depending on where they are on this earth, are going to experience much more tumultuous. Some may be stompled upon, continuously stepped on, with children running around in a park. And so we're very similar to that. So why does one blade of grass experience something different than the other? Is it because they're less than? Is it because they're not deserving? Is it because they were created or born with some sort of karmic deal? It's the same thing with animals. The same thing happens with animals. So the idea that as long as you live on this planet, you will engage in some suffering. As soon as you accept that, half of your battle is over. Half of it's over. Accept that you go through suffering. The really unique and wonderful thing about being a human being is that we experience suffering so that we can grow, so that we can learn, so that we don't always have to be born in the depth of Antarctica or experience that. And we don't have to stay there. We're not stuck there. We're not planted there permanently. We can move. We can grow. We can expand. We can change our circumstances. We can. We absolutely can. And according to the cards that have been dealt. If I was born with legs, it didn't work. Okay? According to my environment and the technology that's available to me, I cannot grow new legs. I'm not going to be reborn into new legs where they were. My experience in this lifetime will be with the inability to be able to have 2 legs like many other human beings can have. But I can experience that differently according to my will, my choice. Now, if I come from a very suffering background, my parents abused me, I had sexual abuse, I had an extreme amount of anxiety, I'm debilitated emotionally and psychologically, then I do have to take baby steps to get myself there. One of the things that causes us a lot of suffering in this lifetime is that we don't have a tribe to tell our story to. And most people don't know our story. How many of you walk into the workplace or meet new friends or go to gatherings, how many of you tell them your entire life story? There are a few that do it, and you've experienced that, and it's quite uncomfortable to listen to somebody's entire life story the evening that you meet them, right? Because we don't have our tribes. When we had our tribes, we grew up with them. We never left our tribe. We never left our territory, or we didn't go very far. Okay, and so people knew what our stories were. They knew what we were like when we were 5, when we were 10, when we were 20, and we married, when we had children, when our parents got sick, when we had an accident and we suffered, and they knew all of that story. And so there's a comfort around that in a way, that somebody gets me, somebody knows me, somebody understands my suffering and my triumphs. Except for Facebook. Look at Facebook or Instagram, right? It's very easy for us to think that we know somebody's story, but they're only divulging the side of the story that they want you to hear. And most of the time, it is not the entire story. I can tell you firsthand, I've got clients that are on Facebook, and that's not their story. If I did not know them personally, I would think otherwise just by viewing what I witness on Facebook or on Instagram or on Twitter, okay, or on Snapchat. I will tell you, a good chunk of my clients will say, well, everybody is much more happier than I am. Everyone has more than what I have. Everyone else is satisfied with what their existence is. No one is as depressed or oppressed or stuck as I am. And it's not true. And you don't know how many times I've heard that. So understanding that suffering is universal. It goes from a blade of grass to the human being and everything in between. Once you understand that, you're halfway there. Now, the second one is being impeccable with your word. Be very careful with the words that you speak, or at least witness them and acknowledge them and vow to change them. That is our inner self-talk, and it is what we say about other people and how we say, how we approach, how we communicate. My theory of the meaning of life is communication, and that's human life. Okay, not the meaning of the entire global universe. Although there is a bit of meaning around that as well too. And how detached we are from communication. So be impeccable with your word. A lot of our suffering comes from our attachment to desire. Okay, so check in with yourself. What do you desire and why do you desire it? So for instance, somebody might say, I want to have a job so that I can make the bills meet, so that I'm not arguing with my husband every night, so that I don't suffer. Ultimately, it's I don't want to suffer. It's not the money to meet the bills so you don't argue with your husband. I don't want to suffer. That is the desire. And that's okay. But does it have to come with a certain job, with a certain income, with a certain amount of lack of communication with your spouse? No. Okay? It comes down to what is your desire. Then we get to communication. Be impeccable with your word. There is the truth of suffering, that suffering exists. There's the truth of the origin of suffering, which is desire, I just mentioned. There is a truth of cessation of desire. There is a truth of cessation of suffering, and the truth of the path of cessation. Basically, what it means is there is an end to suffering. Each individual level or dimension of suffering, there can be and is an end to that. Is there an end to the overall existence of suffering? No. But if you're suffering because you need to financially be able to support your family so that you could feed them, there is an end to that. There is a means to the end. Understanding this truth is your first gateway to happiness. But it doesn't come overnight. There's not a magic pill. We do have ebbs and flows. So there are times when we do have unexpected, very fortunate events that happen and support us. And there are other times that we don't. And this is when we grow the most and create that happiness within us, for us. As I love what Dr. Shefali says, is that this doesn't happen to us, it happens for us. So what I want you to do with this is now, what is your recipe for happiness for 2019? I want a job because I don't want to suffer. Where do you not want to suffer? What is a job going to do for you? What is a new relationship going to do for you? What is a better communication with your spouse going to do for you? What is losing weight going to do for you? What is getting that new car, going on vacations, having a better relationship with your children? What is that going to do for you? That is where you find your nugget of truth of your happiness. Until next time, namaste.